We are backstage at the Column Awards Gala, which is this evening, and we only have like about an hour before we begin with curtain. And with me is our guest of honor, Mr. Anthony Rapp, which many of you know is one of the original Broadway cast members of Rent and of the film version, and also wrote a very beautiful book called Without You, which chronicles not only the musical Rent, but also dealing with the loss of his mother and also his life, which is really an outstanding book. I read it very quickly. I wanted to make sure I've read it all the way through for this weekend. You said in past interviews that it took you almost 5 years to write it.
Yeah, it actually took 6 years plus rewriting. I mean, 6 years to finish a draft. I mean, in that time I wasn't only writing, I was also working on stage and I did a couple films and things. But it was really the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
What
nothing comes close.
What helped you to get through some of the difficult parts of the book?
I wish that I had like a magical formula thing that worked, because it was something different every time. Sometimes I would force myself, sometimes it would just come, sometimes I would schedule things, sometimes I would go on a trip or stay at I did a lot of writing actually at friends' houses. Like when I was I'd be out of town, I'd be staying at their house, and there was something about being out of my normal environment I think that helped sometimes. But then other times I would do the same thing and it wouldn't work. So there's no one magical thing, and at the end it just happened. Like I didn't try anything in particular. I just started writing the end, and then I just finished it very quickly, comparatively to how I had been writing.
How has your family reacted to the book?
Well, my brother and father have read it, and they received it very warmly. And there's complicated things in the book, but they've completely embraced it and were supportive. My mom's family I've heard from 2 people who are very upset that I'm talking about private matters of our family. And then they get upset at things I didn't say or left out, and the thing is, when you write a memoir, it's my perspective. I mean, I'm only talking really about the things that I personally witnessed. So I'm not talking about all the things that they did when I wasn't there with my mom. And so like my mom's sister was a little upset that there wasn't more about her and the things she did, but that's not what I'm writing about, my personal subjective experience. So I understand, and then I talked to my publisher, and he's like, every time people write a memoir that involves family, inevitably people are upset.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sorry that it's caused, that it has caused some people some distress, but that's certainly not what I set out to do. And the response that I've been getting from everyone who's reading it is so powerful, and the kinds of things they're sharing with me about their own stories of their lives and how it's made them look at themselves differently, or given them comfort, or been a kind of a mirror to their experience. That's very meaningful to me. That's really why one of the main reasons I set out to write it. So.
How surprised what are your emotions on how the reviews and everything, I mean, immensely positive. I mean, the praises of you as a writer, and I mean, you're an actor, you're a musician, and then here comes you as an author, and then the reviews. I mean, there's a lot of authors that would kill to have those kind of reviews.
I know. I expected, because I'm an actor, I expected a lot of the press, or people who write about writing, people who write about books, I expected them to be a lot more skeptical and cynical about my book, and the fact that they have embraced it as warmly as they have. I mean, there's been a couple of reviews that have had like minor quibbles, but they've been very minor, and the bulk of it has been very positive. There was a review in a literary, publishing world magazine called Kirkus that literally my editor could have written, or my publisher could have written. I mean, it was like it said, because the thing about good reviews in theater or in any art form, it's of course nice to have people say nice things, but when you have a good review that really articulates what you set out to do, when they see it and they say it in a very clear, strong way, that yes, that's what I meant to do, that's what we set out to do, that's even more gratifying than simply it was good. And that's what Kirkus did, and I was like, that was our first review that we got. My editor called me up, and she's like, people would, like you said, people would kill this kind of review. Yeah. So I'm very surprised and grateful, and it's far exceeded anything that I expected.
I was very surprised how odd the reviews were for the film of Rent.
I was too.
I mean, that it wasn't greedy enough and all this. And I thought it was, I mean, it's so rare as it is today for I don't like to call Rent a musical, it's a rock opera, rock pop opera. to get the majority of the original cast,
Oh, I know.
it's impossible nowadays. And to get the original cast of a landmark, you know, Pulitzer Prize, Tony Award-winning rock opera, 90% of the cast, only 2 were gone. And to do it, I thought it was an absolutely beautiful adaptation. I mean, I saw, when we met during Little Shop, I saw it the week after you won the Tony
Right.
for Best Musical. And I mean, a whole range of emotions that you go through. And when I sat through the film, I mean, the same thing happened. I mean, I was an emotional wreck right into the night. But it was beautiful how it got outside of the stage and it opened it up. So how did you feel? I was very surprised by the reaction.
I thought that in some cases it was that there were some writers who'd been waiting 10 years to debunk Rent, that they never liked it, they never thought it should have been the success it was. They have this theory, they share this theory that's, to me, absolutely preposterous, that the only reason it was ever as successful as it is that Jonathan died, which is not only preposterous but also offensive to his memory. But I mean, it's nonsensical. There's no way that a play would run for 10 years because the author died. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But, so those were the kinds of things. In fact, many of them were talking, they would sort of talk about the movie, but really what they were talking about was Rent as an entity, as a cultural thing that they never liked. And then there were some people who just thought that the film wasn't very good. I mean, then there's some people, like our first review that we got, it was sort of like my review in Kirkus, in that it was in the Hollywood Reporter, the first one that I saw, and it was a top to bottom rave. Like everything about the film they loved, and again they said it in ways like, yes, that's exactly what we intended, and they got it. Very next day, the Variety review came out, and it was like point for point the exact opposite reaction. And again, it seemed like that writer sort of never really liked Rent. You could feel that, you could smell it in his review, that he never liked it, and so he was always kind of like this anyway. So, I mean, Rent has always been a kind of a piece that you either open yourself up to it or you don't.
I agree.
I mean, I guess most theaters kind of like that anyway, but Rent, because it wears its heart on its sleeve, and because it is so passionate and bold in many, it's boldly emotional, it's boldly like sincere. And a lot of theater is sort of clever and ironic, and you know, it doesn't demand that you open your heart to it in that way. And I think some people just are allergic to that. They just don't want to have that kind of experience. They want to have something that's more about repression rather than expression. You know, and people have it out for Chris Columbus for some reason, like he's offended them somehow. I don't know why. But I mean, I'm not saying that he's made the most brilliant films of all time, but he's certainly an accomplished filmmaker, and he's a wonderful human being. Like it's not like he's going around like saying terrible things about people. And yet there are some people that just seem like to hate him. And he recognizes that, he knows that that's the case.
I went to a press sneak peek and 2 more performances, or 2 more screenings of it with just the general public, packed to the gills. And I mean, by the end, people were just bawling and crying, and then when the review started coming, I was like, I don't understand this. It was so bizarre. It was weird.
I know.
So to wrap this up on a personal note, going back to your book, I had no idea about your mom and all that until I started reading that you were writing the book, and then came the book, and then I read it myself. And I think you're very, very true. You're very right when you say how it has affected people, because I lost my brother to cancer in December during the Christmas holidays. So reading your book really, it helped a lot.
But thank you.
And I appreciate it. And I think that was another reason why I pushed my board to invite you, because it really, I just wanted to thank you, because the book really has helped a lot of us who have lost family to that disease.
Thank you, John.
So before I start crying in front of all of my viewers, we're not going to break. This is going to be, you'll be now watching scenes throughout the night of our big gala night, including Mr. Rapp's 2 performances. That's 2, and you're not here to watch it. So thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.